Hello everyone, welcome to Preter's Papers. My name is Patricia Bailey and this is the 48th discussion in this series and it's titled, Who Was Gog? You can find this 2-page printable fact sheet at preterspapers.com. We will sketch out some of the evidence that the Gog chapters, that is, Ezekiel 38 and 39, prophesied the events in Esther. Although written in two very different styles, historical and narrative and apocalyptic, there are remarkable parallels between these two passages that compel serious consideration. A familiarity with the book of Esther is needed as we follow Ezekiel 38 and 39 more or less in order. The notes at the end will help bridge some gaps. However, we recommend Gary DeMar's book, The Gog and Magog End Time Alliance, to fill out this very abbreviated overview. In number 1, we learn that Yahweh was against Gog and his minions, who would come to prominence in the future. Gog would be the prince of the chiefs. Persia was not the dominant world power at the writing of Ezekiel, but assumed that position in 539 BC. The Persian Empire eventually included 127 provinces, and some of them are named in this passage. The word Rosh, present in some translations and seeming to be a location, should have been translated as chief to show Gog's high office, and has been corrected in the majority of translations. And number 2, we list the history needed to connect Haman to the Amalekites and Gog. Haman was an Agagite. Agag, that is, Gog, was king of the Amalekites, ancient enemies of Israel. And number 3, as a result of Mordecai's refusal to bow down to the prideful Haman, he hatched a plan to not only get rid of Mordecai, but all the Jews. He alarmed the king about the Jews' attitude to the law and also assured the king of financial benefits, presumably plunder that would be gained from the Jews. Number 4. About 25 years prior to Haman's promotion to the chief of the governors, the king of Persia allowed the Jews to return to their land to rebuild the temple. The Jews were the people in Ezekiel 38 who had recently been gathered out of the nations and were dwelling peacefully in the land without walls. Nehemiah had not yet rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem, which had been destroyed by the Babylonians years earlier. Number 5. The returning Jews were supplied generously with gold, silver, goods, and cattle, as well as treasures and gifts by their Jewish neighbors. They also brought the riches Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple during the conquest. Ezra enumerated the valuables the Jews took with them to Judea, and these were the very same things Gog determined he would plunder, that is, gold, silver, goods, and cattle. Let's take a look at number 7 in what seems to be exaggerated language. To understand apocalyptic speech, we need only become cognizant of emotional states. For example, when someone close to us dies, doesn't the whole world go dark? With extreme anguish, don't we feel the world is falling apart? With this recognition, we are ready to interpret pictorial apocalyptic language. When the land shakes, the mountains are thrown down with punishing hailstones, fire, and sulfur, we are able to imagine the panic, confusion, and terror visited on Gog's hordes as their plans were reversed against them. And number 8, we find that while the book of Esther was concerned with the defeat of adversaries throughout the provinces of Persia, Ezekiel was concerned with one, the land of Israel. And number 9, we look more deeply into Haman. He had an issue with the Jewish law. He loved man's laws, which could be used to favor him. God's law, honoring the divine order, was not to his liking. God created man in his image with all men equal. Because Mordecai was devoted to Yahweh, he was compelled to defy the immoral honoring of one man over another. An entire people schooled in God's law was dangerous to a man like Haman. His carnal nature drove him to be willing to wipe out a whole nation to preserve his elevated status. And number 10, again, we see the prophet's expansive word pictures that convey the immensity of the great reversal. The confiscated weaponry was vast enough to provide heat for 7 years. The wild beasts and birds of the wilderness fed to the full on the carnage of Gog's hordes. Pictorial language quickly conveys far more than mere factual descriptions. In number 11, we pause a moment to marvel at the foreknowledge given to Ezekiel regarding the very person who would take the role of Gog. The name of Haman was embedded right in the Ezekiel text 3 times. In ancient Hebrew, there were no vowels, so Hamon was the same as Haman. In addition, Hamanah had the same meaning as Haman. Here we see the sovereignty of God. Prophecy demonstrates the supernatural nature of the Tanakh, the whole Old Testament, and attests to the one true God, who knows the end from the beginning. Although usually not recognized as such, the events around Mordecai and Esther were pivotal in salvation history. The Jews were preserved and in turn preserved God's word. The Davidic line was maintained through which the Messiah would be born, to free mankind from sin slavery and restore the broken relationship with God. The Gog and Esther story is a story for our day. The need to honor God as our ruler, honor divine law as authoritative, and to be active participants against tyranny. Thank you for listening. Shalom.